Hello and welcome to the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast with me, Clive Barber, and my good mate, Noel Tom. For the days when you can't ride your bike, there's always the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast. Welcome back, gang. Before we dive into this week's podcast, I just wanted to mention, happy Christmas. It's nearly Christmas, right? This is possibly the Christmas episode, although there might be one after this. We'll just have to see how it goes. Before we get into the podcast, just wanted to mention something. If you're listening in December 2023, Break Magazine, Llel Pavey is hosting a Dakar event at the Bike Shed, London, and he's asked us to go along and help record a podcast with him. So we're going to be co-hosting a podcast with him, talking to a couple of incredible UK Dakar finishers. So get yourself a ticket to come down there. It's on the 29th of December. It starts at 4 o'clock and it's at the Bike Shed, London. The tickets are free. You can get them on Eventbrite. Check out our socials and you can find out all the details on there and get yourself a ticket booked. Speaking of Llel Pavey, he is in fact today's guest. And we asked Llel back on the podcast. We had him on about a year or so ago. And we asked him back to come and talk more about riding your bike and how to do it. What are some of the key skills and how you can ride across various different terrains. There's not many people better in the world than Llel at doing this. So obviously listen to this and then go and dive into his video courses online on YouTube and practice. Right, let's get on with it. We've recorded before, I don't know when it was, about a year ago or something. We talked about lots of things. We talked about you, we talked about your YouTube channel and adventures and various things. We thought it'd be great to get you back on to talk about riding skills. We do a few sort of beginners guides to trail riding, to going on adventures, to camping and all that kind of stuff. And we thought it'd be really good to take some of your YouTube content, which people should obviously consume after listening to this podcast, and maybe talk about top 5 tips. And I've also got some scenarios written down about how you should deal with various obstacles as you come across them on your trail or adventure rides. But first, I just thought it'd be nice if we have a chat about the bike shows that have been on recently.
EICMA was kind of a bit of an eye-opener. It was the first time I've ever been there. And there are so many brands that I have never heard of and so many bikes from brands that I have heard of that I had no idea existed. It was like a real little eye-opener into almost a little window into the future of what like European motorcycles are going to look like. But we just don't get it. Like if you go to the NEC, you'll never see these brands because they don't exist here yet. But EICMA is big enough that they make the effort, you know.
And what do they look like? Do they look like naked sports bikes?
The standout one for me, especially in the kind of world we like to exist in of adventure bikes, was Pavey. Their bikes are, I would say, at the moment, for an independent, I don't know what the actual independence of them is, brand, their motorcycles look the most complete and closest to a production adventure bike or off-road bike. Obviously, you have CF Moto with the like 450 and the 890 based bike, but really they're using what KTM have already got essentially, whereas Pavey is like from the ground up their own bike, and they genuinely look to be making bikes that I can see people walking into a shop and buy like now, right now, which is quite incredible for a brand that feels like they didn't exist 2 years ago. They obviously did, but to us they didn't. Especially they announced a new 800. And they've got 2 versions, a regular homologated street version and a non-homologated version. But the non-homologated version was 169 kilos dry, 800cc twin, 230-ish mil of suspension, good brakes. But it just also looks like a production motorbike. Like it's not quite as nice as like a Triumph or a BMW, but it's a nice bike. Do you know? It's not something you'd walk in and go, that looks like shit, I'm not paying for that. It's not worth $5,000. And that kind of blew me away a little bit. Those kind of bikes are everywhere from manufacturers you don't think of.
What does the quality look like? It's always hard to tell, isn't it? Everybody gets on a bike and pulls the clutch lever in and gets a feel for the switch gear. But
I think you can kind of sort of start to get a feeling with like the finish of the materials, right? Like the way that they're cast. And when you look at enough bikes, you start to see that stuff, the stuff that comes from a high-end manufacturer and the stuff that doesn't. And the Pavey looks more like that than not. Like the paint that they use on the engine is good. There's Chinese manufacturers, or you walk around the show and you look at their bikes and you can tell that they have used the cheapest paint and the cheapest cast material to make the cases, and immediately it stands out. Whereas the Pavey doesn't look like that. It looks more like a bike where there are people manufacturing that who have been manufacturing things for a long time and know what they're doing. It's not like they are pulling it out of the cheapest bin possible. And I think that's where the tide starts to turn, right? Where all of us as punters would start to go, well, if it starts to have more like a Honda level quality than a cheap Chinese bike off eBay quality, you start to think, oh, it's $9,000. Maybe I would take that risk. That's kind of my feeling, is that that gap is now much narrower to a Japanese or a European bike than it ever has been.
The CF motos don't look as cheap, but they've got we haven't seen the price for the 450 yet, but it looks like a decent bike. I think the 850 is about 8.5, or the 800 or whatever it is about, I think the cheapest one's about $8,500, and I think they go up to about 12.5. They look like a reasonable proposition, as long as KTM haven't come in and ruined their reliability.
As a bike journalist, like I think it's actually pretty exciting to have something fresh into the market that, you know, when you look at it, like no big manufacturer is willing to take the risk on making something like 170 kilo 800 twin. They're just not. There's no business case for it. But Pavey, I don't know where the money comes from, but they clearly don't need a business case because they build a production rally bike that you can buy for $9,000. And now they're building an adventure bike that's lighter and as fast as anything else for $9,000. I think that's quite cool, really. Like for me, I'm excited by it. Like I don't earn $100,000 a year. I don't have £20,000 to throw at a GS. So like with my punter hat on, like I think it's exciting to look at the prospect of having a decent adventure bike for a reasonable price.
If you haven't realised already, we're delighted to welcome Llel Pavey back to the podcast again. Llel was with us, I don't know, a year or so ago, talking about all things Llel Pavey and Brake Magazine and his YouTube channel. But this time we're going to focus on some riding tips.
Just talk for a second, because we were supposed to talk to you a few weeks ago and you found yourself on your private Learjet coming back from the BMW launch.
It's a Gulfstream. Not Lear.
I'm almost kind of more interested in hearing about what a BMW launch is like, especially for such a significant thing coming out. Where was it and what was it like?
It was in Malaga in south of Spain. I'd say in terms of press launches, it was interesting. Press launches in 2023 are an interesting concept anyway. This is like a much bigger conversation that I think a lot of the people in the media are having at the moment. But press launches typically have been like ways to show off the capability of bikes, and some manufacturers get that quite differently to others. And I would say in terms of the GS launch, it was decent. This is quite a typical thing. Like there's obviously a little bit of this where they try to make the whole experience nice. So the hotel was very nice. The food was decent. And that's quite typical, really. I would say the road riding was really good and the off-road riding was not. There was not much of it, to be honest. There was enough that you could kind of get a good sense of the bike, and they gave me and the little group of British journalists that I was in a bit of extra time over what I think some of the other groups had. It was pretty mediocre, which for me is a little bit of a surprise. We did a full day of road riding, so it was like 240 kilometers, including two photo stops, one photo stop. But that's the bit that surprises me, really, is that there's not much media creation for, like you say, such an important bike. They didn't really put much effort into that. We had like 3 corners with 3 photographers on and 1 photographer for off-road, no video guy. The UK sent a video guy with our group that we had some video, but otherwise it was pretty slim on the ground, really. I mean, the experience is always lovely. They have a press conference, you eat some food, you ride a bike all day, you eat some more food at lunch and some more at dinner, and you have beer and wine. And...
Yeah, I could see how you could be really disappointed by that.
The disappointing bit is, from my point of view, really I am there to do a job. As much as I obviously it's a great privilege to go and on a press launch. It's a great experience in life. Like it's still work and I want to do the best job with my videos that I always can. So when you come away and there's like almost no video from them, it makes the job much harder. It means that the viewers have to watch way more 360 video than they probably want to.
Had you ridden one before you went out?
I'd never even seen one. My name's Llel Pavey. I am the son of Simon Pavey.
Get it over and done with.
That's how you should know me. My primary job, I suppose, is I'm a YouTuber, but in quite a traditional motorcycle journalist way. So I do bike reviews, travel films, and I also do a lot of tutorial content because I grew up teaching people to ride motorbikes off-road, essentially, from being street riders into being competent off-road riders. I was lucky to also grow up in Wales, riding around the mountains, stuck on a dirt bike a lot, looking at my dad at the top of the hill, wondering how I would also get there. And that translated into a bit of dirt bike racing, which translated into a little bit of rally racing. I did Romaniacs in 2014, which was a pretty life-changing experience. And then I did the Dakar in January 2015. And that was about the end of my racing career. And now I suppose I like to call myself a professional trail rider now. Just amble around.
Welcome to the club.
And make videos.
I was trying to hide it, but I was very excited to meet your dad at the bike show. I was just trying to be cool, like you do.
I've met him like 2 or 3 times. I'm still get just as excited. Simon Pavey, I can't believe it.
I must have watched Race to Dakar at least 3 times.
Is it Race to Dakar that kind of put him on your radar then?
No, I think I knew him before then as a Dakar racer. You know, he's finished 8 times, hasn't he? That's amazing. But yeah, I think it was, and then sort of, you know, you get to know him a little bit better on Race to Dakar. He's an Aussie, so what you see is what you get, right? There's no fakeness there, is there?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I should probably go back and watch Race to Dakar actually, because my memory of it, like obviously I was a teenager when that, like a young teenager when that happened, and I remember they just being quite frustrated a lot of the time, to be honest.
Well, is it years and years since you've seen that?
Yeah, I probably haven't watched it since I was, probably, when did it come out? 2006, maybe?
Something like that.
Yeah, I probably watched it when it came out, or maybe I've watched it once since, but yeah.
Because what I was thinking we should do, maybe think of 5 or 6 top tips for beginner and developing riders. What sort of things should they focus on? And we can refer them obviously back to your channel to go and watch the videos as well. What's the first thing you really need to focus on?
The first thing that I think you need to focus on is really understanding the fundamentals of riding off-road and what those are. For me, it doesn't matter how good you get, whether you're a complete beginner, whether you're like a semi-experienced trail rider, maybe you've been doing some greenailing for a few years, or you're a decent enduro rider, or you're an elite level enduro rider. The fundamentals are all the same, and the better you are at those, the easier that's going to make the task that you're trying to achieve. And those fundamentals for me are your standing position. You really have to understand in the long run, not at the beginning, it's a bit complicated, but in the long run, you want to try and understand what it is that you're trying to achieve with your body, so that if you put your body in the right place, everything else gets easier. Like, it really does. You don't need to be anywhere near as fit. You don't need to be anywhere near as coordinated or as strong if you're starting in a good position and finishing in a good position. That can be as complicated or as simple as you want to make it, right? From the nuance of where you put your feet. I've literally just finished editing a mini tip about this, to your hand position and where you're looking and so on. That stuff is super important. Then the other fundamental that's quite important is your clutch control. It doesn't need to be the best clutch control in the world, but to understand what you're trying to do and how to make that happen is really important. Then I would say a little bit of understanding the same with the brakes, because the 3 things kind of all go in tandem together. And the better you get, the more you're just using those same skills in more complicated ways. They always refer back to really good basic braking technique, really good basic clutch control, and really good basic standing position. Once you've got those, it kind of sets you up for success. And if you haven't got those, you will just hit a ceiling much lower than your athletic potential is going to be, if that makes sense. Like, I've spent a lot of time teaching at my old man's school as well. So I kind of did more than a decade of teaching there. And the primary course they run is a level 1 course. And the first 4 hours of that course are giving a new rider those fundamentals to make sure that you're starting off in the right direction. If you don't have those, it's a game over. We see it, especially at the school, you see it where people who are experienced riders come. Maybe they've been trail riding for 5 years. Maybe they did a load of motocross when they were a kid, and those fundamentals were never explained to them and they don't have them. It's almost like they run into the same problems a new rider does. Even though they've got more experience and they can go faster and they understand what the dirt is doing, they still just hit the same limit. Even if you take that to someone like myself, like, I never made it to the elite pro level. I was too lazy and unfit, and also my fundamentals weren't quite good enough. And as I've got older, they've got better. That's always kind of your limit, if that makes sense. Like, even when you watch the very, very best pro riders, you can get extremely good with kind of mildly janky fundamentals. Like, you're kind of nearly there, but not quite there. If you start to understand what you're looking at, you'll see it in like Supercross, where some of the best riders in the world still have technique holes, and it punishes them all the time. And the ones that don't have those technique holes are the ones that really make it look effortless. It's an interesting thing. So for me, that's the absolute first thing. Understand the fundamentals of standing position, clutch control, and brakes. And when you get those, then you can go a long way.
Do you show drills for practicing and getting clutch control right?
Yep, there's some really good drills for it. Some really simple ones, actually. And this will kind of lead into the second point. And I've made a few mini tip Mondays on this over the years. And actually, these ones tend to be the least popular ones because they're not flashy and exciting, but they're the ones that let you do the flashy and exciting stuff. I'd say there's kind of two clutch control drills that I find to be really, really helpful at basic level. The first one is, I didn't actually come up with this. I can't remember who came up with it. But they teach it at Off-Road Skills on the level 2 foundation course and upwards. Basically, you learn to pull away on any bike with no throttle in a high gear. On a GS, like you can start that in third gear. That's where we start. So you take someone, put them on a bike, put it in third gear and pull away without using the throttle at all, no throttle. And then learn to ride around a really basic course using the clutch and gears with no throttle, uphill, downhill, changing gears, no throttle ever. And then learn to do it in fourth gear and fifth gear and sixth gear. And what it teaches you is that most clutch control is about learning to be incredibly patient with the clutch and also learning to separate your body movement from what your left finger is doing so that you can hold the clutch in one place and keep it there for a long, extended period of time. It's the foundation for doing incredibly difficult hill starts, which leads into much more difficult things like super difficult uphills and learning to be explosive and hop the bike and lift the bike. And all of those things all come from that one foundation of being patient with the clutch and separating your body movement from what your fingers are doing.
You said one finger. Do you use one or two fingers? I did the trials school a few weeks ago, and that was one finger clutch, one finger brake all the time.
It depends a little bit on the bike, but I would say, and it depends how hard I need to pull on the handlebars. I say most of the time I ride with one finger, yeah. If the clutch is really heavy or like you're a bit tired, maybe I use two. But it also depends on your forearm strength, right? You are both pretty big dudes and I'm like a big dude and I've got quite big hands. So for me, using one finger is not difficult. If you have smaller hands or your clutch is a bit heavy for you, two is no problem. But I think sometimes a bit counterintuitive when you've learned to ride on the road, especially in Europe, like the way they teach us to ride on the road, is to use four fingers. But the problem you have with that is, like I said, about separating your body movement from your clutch control. That's really difficult using four fingers. As humans, when we panic, our reaction is to grab, like it's a really primal thing. It comes from being a monkey falling out of a tree, I think. If you fall, you grab with a lot of force. And the same thing happens on a dirt bike. And if you can't separate using the clutch from your panic reaction, that creates a problem at some point, earlier than you think as well. Probably the first time you get stuck on a hill and you should stop, but you pull the clutch in and go backwards at a rapid rate. I don't know if any of you have tried to ride backwards, but that's an advanced thing to do, not a beginner thing to do.
And that exercise, Llel, that's done at tick over or just at low reps?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Just no throttle at all.
Zero. Yeah, and it's going to change depending on the bike and the amount of torque and the amount of flywheel it's got. But for sure, even on like a 2-stroke dirt bike, you can do that in a higher gear than you think. You just have to learn that patience, learn what's going on. I said 2, but I think it's one of 3 clutch control drills that I kind of have taught over the years that I think are really, really incredible tools for rapidly leveling up your understanding of how a clutch works. The other one is hill starts, but instead of doing hill starts off the brake, like we're taught when we go and do your road school stuff, like that's how I was shown when I went and did it on a road school, is to come off the back brake. But actually, when you ride difficult enduro stuff, I think if you look at most extreme enduro riders and most good enduro riders, no one's coming off the back brake to do a hill start because you need an understanding of where the grip level is. So you learn to do it by holding the bike on the clutch first. So you're using the clutch and the throttle, and to go from that position requires a lot of patience as well. They kind of link together. So we teach the same thing on the off-road school. A lot of hill start work because it's super, super good for your clutch control. It just teaches you that patience in such a literal way, because when you do it well, you ride up the hill and the wheel doesn't spin. And when you do it wrong, you either stall or your wheel spin. And so you have that immediate feedback. That's a really good drill for that. Like you can practice that yourself. It doesn't need to be a particularly steep hill. Just go and find something that's like slightly steeper than you think is comfortable and practice.
How far can you ride backwards?
Which way are we facing now?
Well, just facing forward, but just coasting down a hill.
I'm not particularly good at that. I'd say like
meters,
1 in 10 times I can probably do like 5 meters 1 in 5 times.
Really? Wow.
But I don't know if you saw, like the best guy I know at this is Neil Hawker, the guy that was doing the demos on the BMW stand. He is like unbelievable at this. I mean, every school for the last 7 years, he has practiced it on every bike he's put away. He is relentless with it, but as a result, he is now very, very good at that. Like consistently can ride 20 or 30 meters backwards. He's got really good control of it. He knows exactly how to do it time and time again. It's really impressive to watch, but it's impressive, I think, only if you know it's difficult. He does it at the show every year and no one cares. Like no one notices. And then he does like a burnout and everyone's like, oh, that's so cool.
Have you ever done it, Clive? I've done it by accident I used to have an F800, a BMW belt-driven bike.
How did you do it accidentally? Were you drunk or on drugs?
I was just at a junction on a hill, and I think I just thought, I knew there was nothing behind me. I just thought I'd try it. And I did it for about 4 or 5 meters. It was just a really beautifully balanced bike. Yeah, it was lovely.
So you're sitting the right way round and just rolling backwards then?
Yeah, what do you mean sitting the right way around?
But obviously your steering and your balance is all reversed.
It's fucking pointless.
It has become one of those skills that as I've got better at it, it is pointless, but I use it all the time. Yeah. If that makes like whenever there's like a bank to turn around on, I have a go. Because I can. And
I don't think it's pointless. I think there'll be a few. I can imagine a scenario where you want to sort of almost do some static balance to look at something and maybe reposition yourself by moving backwards slightly.
Yeah, there's that case whereby a lot of people, they get stuck on a hill climb. Actually, what they should be doing should just be rolling backwards until you find somewhere with traction that's not got a rock in your way.
So how cool would it be to do that with your feet up?
Yeah, you would look. I mean, anyone there would be super impressed, and that's all that matters is your 5 mates on the hill, isn't it?
We talked about fundamentals. Once we've practice those, and we continue to practice these things forever, right? It's not as if you just do it like Llel with his reverse riding. It's something you can always improve on and keep plugging away at and doing more and more often as you remember to try it.
I think that is my second point.
Oh fuck, sorry, I've spoilt it for you now.
No, you've segued so beautifully into it. It's like we planned it. I was driving home earlier and I was literally thinking about these things. What would they be? No, so I think that's a really important part because I've thought about this quite a lot over the years, because occasionally you meet someone who's been trail riding for 35 years and not in a mean way, but they're still a bit shit.
No.
And I kind of always try to understand how that happens, really. And the conclusion I've come to is that when you go out and you just ride for fun, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with doing this. Like the whole point of riding motorcycles is for fun. But when you just go and ride for fun and you're not thinking about what you're doing or why you're doing it or putting any purposeful practice, the rate of progression is quite slow, really. And it depends a bit on who you are as a person. Some of us are much more analytical than others. But that kind of points back to the problem of if you want to get better, I think you really need to be quite purposeful with what you're trying to do. And it doesn't mean you can't go out just trail riding and have a good time, but sometimes it's a really good thing to add in a specific skill, whether it's working on making sure that your riding position is as good as it can be and you're balanced and you're trying to understand what's going on, or if it's focusing on how you brake or focusing on how you use the clutch or trying to learn to lift the front wheel, but having some element of deliberate, purposeful practice. And if you really want to actually get good quickly, dedicating some time to it on a regular basis of getting a pack of sports cones from Sports Direct, or if you live in a non-UK country, Decathlon, and going and using the drills that people are making great videos about on the internet to good effect. There are some wonderful drills that can really help you, whether they're on my channel or some of the other YouTube channels that make incredible tutorial videos. Like there's a few I watch because they're better at what I want to be better at than I am, and they've figured out ways to teach these things. And sometimes the way I teach something might not work for you. So there's so many options, but that point of going and being deliberate with your practice is something that I think a huge quantity of people miss. Like they'll go and do a training school and they'll pay 500 quid for it and they'll get all these great lessons and all this great knowledge. And then they'll just do nothing with that for another year until they do the next training school. And if that's what you want to do, crack on. Like there's no judgment, but if you actually want to make progress, you have to practice. And for me, like that was the biggest upskill in my own riding, is when I put time into riding around cones because I was teaching other people to do it, and actually going and practicing on my own, on my dirt bike, riding around in circles in the woods until I got better at riding around that circle. And it's maybe a bit boring, but like the end result is that you put in a little bit of graph there, you get much more enjoyment out of riding your bike in the long run because you can do more with it.
I mean, you've never done that and not seen results, have you? So of course it works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just as a slight aside, do you have days where you're really on it and everything seems to work really well, and other days where it doesn't seem to fall into place?
Yeah, 100%. Some days you get on a bike and maybe the stars have been the wrong color at night, or I don't know, you had a few too many beers and you just cannot ride a motorcycle. Like you just feel like shite. I think that's just the natural law of things. And some days you get on it and your brain is a bit quicker and your movement is a bit better. And maybe you had a stretch of 4 weeks ago and that's still helping. I don't know what it is, but some days you just have that, don't you? You get on a bike and you feel like God's gift to earth.
Definitely. I can never work out whether it's because I'm thinking about it too much or not thinking about it enough, or my tire pressure's different.
Me either. No, me either. I mean, the more you do, the more you kind of start to separate your own riding from like the bike, for example. Because I've done a lot of bike testing over the years, I kind of practiced in a good level of feel. So I kind of know whether the sag is off or the tire pressures are off or whatever, just mostly by feel, not always, but mostly by feel. So then I really know that it's me that's a bit shit and not the bike. Which I don't know if that's a good thing or not. At least sometimes if you have the doubt, it can make you feel better about yourself.
I often find that just relaxing helps an awful lot, just to sort of position yourself on the bike and just kind of shake yourself down a little bit to just kind of relax. And as often it's going with the bike, letting the bike do its thing underneath you, isn't it really? And balancing on top of the bike rather than holding on for grim death.
100%. Like learning to not over input the bike is a really important part. I didn't come up with it, but one of the instructors at the school always says wheels around, and if you let them do their thing, they'll just roll over them. It's kind of a good thing. Like when you're touching the handlebars heavy all the time and you're inputting it, you're upsetting the bike, and it's a recipe for disaster. The softer and gentler you can be with it, the better, for sure.
I mean, I've been trail riding now for 20 years or whatever, and I just remember going out trail riding initially, I'd come back absolutely exhausted, completely beasted. But now, well, I'm a lot older, so I'm still fairly knackered, but you just get better at it, don't you, really? It's that whole thing about using momentum is massively important on getting up hills. And I think a lot of that, because I've not really had any proper training, comes with years and years of experience. But part of the reason of talking to you is, well, let's cut out those 15 years of wasted shit riding and take some advice and do some practice. Trials Day a few weeks ago was absolutely phenomenal for me. Made a massive difference.
Who was that with?
Trials Day. They're down in near Leek. Stu Day is the guy that runs it. We had a guy called Ian Galton. They were on the podcast a few weeks ago. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I did a taster with him at a gas event last year, and I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot really quickly. Do you know, I never rode trials, and there's some like differences in technique and differences in the way you think about stuff. And for me, it's like you have to kind of change, not so much the leaning and the balance, is more just the detail with the foot pegs, how he kind of teaches it versus how, like, I come from a much more traditional enduro motocross style background in how you move on the bike and how you control it. And I think for the most part, that works really well on adventure bikes, but there's some parts where trials technique being slightly different is super helpful. It was quite interesting to learn that, really, and to make some progress and hear that different opinion and kind of go back to almost being a bit of a beginner, you know, and go, okay, I need to rethink about this and listen to what this dude's saying because he's way better than me.
Did it grab you? Would you want to do more of it?
Absolutely. So I actually looked into doing a bit more where I live. Trials is not that accessible exactly where I live in the country, which is a bit strange. A lot of the UK, there's areas where you can join a trials club and they have like a dedicated area you can go and ride, and it's pennies and there's lots of competitions. But strangely, in this little area of Dorset, it doesn't seem to be anything that close. I haven't found anything. So, but yeah, absolutely. I think trials is, do you know the bit that's surprising, especially from coming from riding bikes in a quicker manner? Like I grew up riding enduro, and enduro is, even though it's slow and technical, it's really about going as fast as you can. I really enjoyed riding around a flat piece of ground at 1 mile an hour. Like I had just as much fun. It's a different kind of fun, but I had just as much fun as I'd had on the motocross track at that gas event. I think there's a lot to be said for that as well, right? Like if you've got a flat piece of ground, you can have a huge amount of fun on a 7 horsepower 125 trials bike. Did you guys enjoy it as well?
Well, this is why I have fun all the time, really, because it's kind of probably ride it more in the winter time. It's my little, when the roads get gritted and it all gets a bit horrible to ride at speed and cold wind, it's quite nice just to get the trial bike out, pop out onto the estate.
What kind of estate do you live on? Council estate or a country estate?
It's either the trials bike or his Suron. What's the next skill or thing we need to think about?
The next one is a little bit more introspective, and I think it's a little bit to do with your own ego, which is a much more philosophical, psychological conversation. In my experience of like myself over the years and my own overinflated ego, and then teaching other people, the people who are the kindest to themselves, but also manage to put their own egos in their back pocket and take in what's being said and take critique well and not have high expectations of themselves to be something. Those are the people that have the most fun and then learn the quickest. And the two go hand in hand. I think that's kind of quite an important thing. I had this a lot myself when I've tried to learn other sports. Like part of my own self-identity was always being like vaguely decent at things. Like I was pretty good at football as a kid, and I was pretty good on a motorbike as a kid. Not amazing, but like decent. And that was kind of my thing, was like, oh yeah, if I do a sport, I'm like decent at it. Eventually you kind of realize that, yeah, you have a moment in your life where I think I had a moment in my life where I was like, I need to just drop that because it's actually getting in the way. Like my desire to be good quickly is ruining how fun this should be. And actually I should just enjoy it a bit more. It was mostly my girlfriend that kind of pointed it out to me. She was like, you're being a dick, stop being a dick. I was like, okay, I'll do that. And it's been much better since. But as a result, like even in my own dirt bike riding, like for me, that makes a really big difference because I don't care whether I'm fast or not fast. As long as I'm having a good time, then I'm having a good time and I'm probably going to get better. And that's what I've seen at the school as well, is when someone turns up and their identity is attached to being super good at stuff, they're having a hard time, or they don't want to listen, or they just want to go fast and do skids. They might start out quite good because they're brave and they're full of bravado, but their progression is really stunted. And quite often you see it where they end up the worst person in the group after 2 days when they started out as the best. So if you can kind of find it in yourself to be a little bit self-aware. I know it's like a really odd thing to say, but if you can find it to be a bit self-aware, I find it helps massively with how much enjoyment you have and how quickly you learn.
Are you recognizing any of yourself in this, Noel?
I think I'm quite good at taking instruction because I do consider myself to be probably quite shit. Probably.
Agreed.
I'd be very nervous to go out for a ride with you because I imagine you'd be behind me, Llel, going, oh, Jesus. Oh, Jesus. So I'd be doing stuff that we might have talked about this before, that probably works for me, but it's not that great. When you were saying before, Clive, about getting tired, I still find myself going up quite extended climbs and thinking, my arms are killing me. And because I'm pulling on the handlebars, my position's all wrong. And I'm not in a relaxed position on the bike. I'm probably in the wrong place on the bike.
I think if Llel was behind you, he'd see what all of us see, and that the image that's only been recently shattered. Now we all wear comms. Noel is an incredibly good, incredibly smooth rider. Recently, following him with confidence, like, oh, fuck, oh, ah, and he's just like the rest of us, really.
Are you a talker when you're riding then?
No, not really, but there is a lot of, whoa.
I have quite a hard time talking if I'm concentrating. I can only do one or the other. I can have a chat or I can ride and concentrate, but the two don't mix.
But I actually recognise myself in what you've just said, a younger version of myself, because I was so fucking desperate to be good at this because I loved it so much. It was all seemed to be about going fast and being the quickest. And I think that's completely changed now with age. And I'm probably a much better rider for it as well now. I've come round to Noel's perspective, really. I don't really want to go out with people, certainly not on the trails, that want to go fast, because it's just not the place to do it, really.
I totally agree. And also, like for me, like you just said, I ended up a better rider because I stopped caring so much. Like even now, I don't go racing very often anymore. And I definitely don't have the fitness to ride a 3-hour race at race pace without putting in some work. But when I go riding, like my results have been better because I don't care if the guy in front of me is faster. Like I don't try so hard. I just enjoy it for what it is. It's a day out on my bike. I'm having a great time. I'm riding with some friends. I might fall off. I might do a jump. It's going to be great.
It's interesting when we go out with people that haven't ridden or are fairly new to riding, and they all worry about, oh God, I'm going to be a bit slow. I'm going to be a bit shit. We don't fucking care. As long as you have a good time, let us go in front so we can film you falling off, and then we can laugh about it on the 4th coffee stop that day.
No, I am 100% on the same page. Like I will ride with anyone of any ability. I don't care. It's not what it's about, is it? For me, it's about like riding a motorbike is super fun regardless. And doing it with other people is a great experience. Ability is kind of not the reason to go out riding, really, is it? Like if I want to go fast and do something difficult, I'll go and do a race. If you just want to go trail riding, I'll ride with anyone. It's still going to be fun, isn't it?
Yeah, also hurts less when you fall off if you're going slower, usually.
Sometimes, depends a little bit, doesn't it?
Have you always seen more of that ego with men more than women?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Occasionally you get it with women, but I don't want to oversimplify this. But normally I've found that if women have an ego when you're teaching them, it's much more like inwards than outwards. Like they're much harder on themselves rather than not listening to what you're saying. With men, like I think this is probably quite a documented thing. If you put a group of 7 men together, and like there's some primal instinct for someone to want to be at the top of that group and assert some authority, like that's gonna happen a little bit. Because you also see the dynamic change a lot if you have 6 men and a woman. It just changes the whole dynamic of the group. It's pretty fascinating to watch.
In what way? What does it do?
It softens the whole group off, like massively. Like men's behavior changes completely as soon as you introduce a woman into that teaching environment. Generally, I find like that ego kind of shrinks a little bit. Maybe other people have got a different experience, but that's been my experience anyway. And when you have a group of women that are learning together, they're all much more supportive of each other, like outwardly so. Like they try to help each other along. They're chuffed for each other when it goes well. Whereas like I think until a group of guys know each other well, that doesn't happen. Once they know each other well, or there's someone in that group that creates that dynamic, it can happen, but it doesn't just happen naturally. Does that make sense? Like it sounds like you guys have got it where like if one of you gets up a hill, you'll all like have a bit of a joke and a laugh about the others being shit, but actually you're all just chuffed for each other that you're having a good time.
No, we're not there. No, we're fucking near there.
Bloody women, they're just nicer, aren't they?
Far better people than we are.
Are far better people. You guys are really cute. How long have you been together?
I'm sure some people think we do actually live together.
We had a break once. We had a break.
I'd love to do one of those Morecambe and Wise skits where we're actually in bed together with our helmets on or something like that.
So that's kind of a big one, really, isn't it? The ego thing.
Before we get on to point number 4, I'll give you a little chance to think about what it is if you haven't already. I just wanted to tell you what your most popular instructional videos were on YouTube, if you don't already know. The most popular one, in fact, the most popular, there's the same one with...
Can I have a guess at this?
Go on then.
Yeah, go on, have a guess.
I think U-turns and U-turns.
Yeah, it's U-turns, turning in tight places, and spin turns. Isn't it ridiculous?
Yeah.
And that's like it's like 750,000 views plus the other 2 as well. So there's probably 1 million views on how to do a U-turn.
What do you put that down to?
People want to learn how to do fucking U-turns. I haven't finished yet. Shut up. So the other ones, you've done 5 essentials.
Just wait for the UN.
5 essentials one is like the second most popular. Standing, sitting, looking, foot pegs and counterbalance. And you wear your sunglasses. Gravel corners, a brake slide turn, tips for shorties. I think I've renamed that myself. And then 1 tip to change your riding forever. And that was the 2-finger on the clutch thing. So there you go.
I'd say actually some of those are quite fundamental things, which is, it's interesting because most of those videos are actually solvable by mastering those fundamentals that I kind of mentioned, or not mastering, but getting pretty good at those in the first point, which is kind of interesting that people want to learn I don't know how to kind of word this really, but like people are trying to get to an end goal without knowing, it's like a bit of a Mr. Miyagi thing. Like you need to learn to wax the car before you can defend the shot. And it's the same kind of thing, really. And I think that's kind of my 4th point then, really. If you don't know what those fundamentals are, I think a really good shortcut to getting there is to go to a good school. It's not a magic bullet, but if you can afford to, going and doing a course with someone who clearly has a good structured lesson plan, has good ways of teaching, is articulate and excites you, go and do that because it will shortcut you. In my experience of this stuff, it's much harder to learn this stuff on your own by watching videos and trying to be introspective about yourself than it is to go and ride in front of someone else who knows what they're doing, knows what to look for, knows how to correct those mistakes quickly and efficiently. It's kind of like a 10x on your progress. Otherwise, you'll spend weeks and weeks and weeks riding around trying to figure this stuff out and going out and doing these YouTube videos on your own, and you'll make progress, but it just won't be as quick. So if you have, in the UK, it's about 500 quid, isn't it, to do a 2-day school wherever you go, but go and do one of the good ones. The BMW off-road skills one. No, but like the same, like, Chris Birch's one is great. The Yamaha one is good. Who else would be a good school? Like the Stu Day one, I'm sure for you guys, like for your trials riding, I'm sure that was like an immediate level up. He puts you in the right position. He explains to you how the foot pegs work. He gets your clutch control better. And then you do 2 hours with him and you're like, holy shit, I've learned so much and I feel so confident. when I started on this, I felt like Bambi. And I think that's one of those things that in life, if you can afford to, well-structured training by someone who's been doing it a while and knows what they're doing is a really good investment in your time, if you can afford it. If you can't, then watch YouTube videos.
I think the key is there, that well-structured thing, because you can go somewhere and they can kind of put you on a bike and go, try riding up that hill, see how you get on, and I'll give you some tips afterwards. But I think what was great about the Stu Day thing, and we've talked about this at length, so I won't go on it for too long, but properly structured, building one lesson onto the next. And it was a remarkable day. Well, we were only there for 4 hours. It was incredible.
Well, I think that format, if you go to a school that has like that format, and you know, I think with Stu, what I experienced is he's clearly a person that cares quite a lot about finding the right method to teach you the thing he wants to teach you. It's one of the things that I think is quite special about my old man's place is the same thing. There's a bunch of instructors there, myself included, who really cared about finding the best way to teach you the thing we were trying to teach you and to make sure that we were understanding that to the really best level that we could so that we could teach it well. Because there's a lot of old tropes in riding technique that don't actually help you solve the problem. Things like stand up straight or put your elbows up. They're kind of a bit too reductive. They don't really solve the problem. And if you can find a place where they do solve that problem and they have that layer upon layer thing, you learn quickly, but also I think it protects your confidence a lot. Because I'm sure you had it with Stu, because you're not overstepping what you're capable of and you have the previous foundations. It's just like climbing a set of stairs, and you might get scared a few times, but you're not shattering your confidence because he's taking you to a hill that you absolutely cannot ride down without nearly dying. Some people are fine with that and they revel in that experience, but in my experience, more people are not that person. Do you know, that person is the kind of person who's like, oh, I'm going to go skydiving when they're 12. But they were the person who's hanging upside down from a tree. They are the people that generally don't need as much instruction because they've figured it out because they have done so much of it already. Whereas if you're not that person, I think protecting your confidence is really important to your long-term enjoyment of it as well.
Perfect. So have you got one more?
I do have one more, yeah.
I'll ask you the question again in a minute. And then I've got 5 different scenarios, which we can kind of maybe just kind of give like 30-second, do this, this, and this.
Are you telling me to talk for less time?
No, not at all. Not at all. No. If there's more to it, because this has been.
No, I can do
this
that.
is really good. It's far better than I thought it was going to be, to be honest. And it's.
Thank you.
Doing. What, you don't like it now?
Well, no, I was just saying, how do you have various ways of taking that? This is way better than I thought it would be.
I'm like such a naturally, like my mindset is everything that I see is like the glass half full. So you said that and I was like, that's great. I'm so pleased.
Oh, that's the way I meant it.
You could give me a half a pint of shit and I'd be like, that's half a pint of not shit. That's the way my brain works. It's like, so I think the 5th one, and this is quite a common idea that people have, and I've totally been guilty of this myself in other sports, is this idea that I'm not good, so I shouldn't have good equipment until I'm good. I don't need it. And it's pretty counterintuitive. I think when you're a beginner at any sport, having poor performing equipment is much more difficult for you than it is for a good rider. If I get on a dirt bike and the suspension isn't great, I have enough knowledge, not the best knowledge, but enough knowledge to ride around that problem and still ride pretty quickly and still make that bike do mostly what I want it to do. Maybe it's not as good as it could be, but I can probably still jump a pretty decent sized jump, probably still ride over a pretty decent sized log, mostly with like a good understanding of what's going on. But when you're a beginner, you do not have the skill, the balance, the timing, or the knowledge base to ride around those problems. So if you have shit tires, if you're sag on your bike, whatever it is, whether it's a GS or a CRF 300, if that's wrong, it will be really hard to go around a corner. It will be really unstable if it's wrong the wrong way. If your handlebars are in a bad place, if your levers are pointed in different directions, if your brakes don't work, all of those things just make your life so much harder. And it's such a common thing that I hear people say, I don't need to do that because I won't tell the difference. It doesn't matter if you can tell the difference. If your bike's shit, it's still shit just because you don't know. I would say that like it's worth just paying a little bit of attention to your bike setup and making sure that you've done as much as you can do. I made a really simple video about like the 5 things that you should do with a new bike just to make sure it's perfect and to give you the best starting place. Until you've got more of a knowledge base and you fiddle and you learn the feeling, you might not be able to take it beyond that, but at least you're starting from a place where your bike is working as good as you can get it working. And then when you start learning, that process is going to be much easier because you're not fighting the equipment. That includes being careful not to put crutches on your bike to solve problems that are problems in your technique. A good example of this for me is bar risers. Like, there's nothing wrong with bar risers in the right situation for the right reason, but don't put them on because your riding position is bad. If you're 5'9", you definitely don't need bar risers on almost any bike. Maybe on a CRF 300L, they could go up 10 mil, maybe, but you definitely don't need them. You can definitely ride that bike very well and very comfortably without them if you're in the right position. It's the same on all bikes. I would say almost all bikes can be ridden in a good position if you learn that good position without them. Now, if you want them in the long run, that's fine, but don't whack 30 mil bar risers on and then wonder why you keep washing the front wheel, or wonder why your balance is off all the time and you get thrown around a lot. You'll be too upright. So there's a little bit of that as well, where you've got to be careful not to throw mechanical solutions at physiological problems. Those are 2 really unnecessarily big words to describe that. Yeah, that's my last one. Make sure your bike is set up well. Don't put shit on it doesn't need until you know that you actually want it.
Same with musical instruments. Like if you've got a guitar, cheap guitars, you generally have high actions. Almost impossible for anybody to play, let alone a kid. Same with brass instruments, which I'm very familiar with now. I've kind of got a slightly better one than I started off with, and it's so much easier to play.
There's a balance of that where like, I'm not saying you need to go and buy a KTM 690 as your first bike. A CRF 300L is a great bike. You don't need a high-performing thing. You need the thing you have to be performing well. There's a difference there, right? Like the 300L is a good example. The rear shock is really soft in standard trim, which means that the sag is always too much for anyone who's more than 75 kilos. And if the sag is too much, it makes it hard to stand up properly because the whole bike is leaning backwards and it means it won't turn. So it's going to climb out of ruts. It's going to feel awful in corners. If you put any luggage on it, it's going to handle badly for anyone. But if you just put a stiffer spring in there for 70 quid and set the sag with a tape measure, I guarantee it's better for everyone.
You're a big bar riser guy, aren't you, Clive? You've got massive bar risers on bikes. And I think I do the same. And I think I do the same without really thinking about it.
But I'm 6'2". I basically like to get a comfortable standing position. When I get on any bike, like I feel like I'm almost 90 degrees bending over. It
depends a bit on what you're doing with that bike as well. But like if you were at the extreme end and you were racing a dirt bike, even at 6'2", I would never use bar risers because that bending at 90 degrees that's uncomfortable on a long trail, which I agree it's not comfortable, but that is a much more stable position, which is why you see tall guys really hinged at the hips and quite bent over. If you go back and watch like old footage of David Knight, he was a super big guy and he always ran really low handlebars. If you're trying to go really fast, that low position is very stable. But I agree with you in terms of going trail riding on a dirt bike, it's pretty uncomfortable because it's quite an extreme position. It's designed to be. So there's always a bit of a balance with that as well. This is why adventure bikes have more upright riding positions because it is more comfortable. I don't need to be riding my GS like I'm racing Dakar. Like it's just not it's a different sport, right?
I like to be able to stand to attention just in case I hear the national anthem.
Technically, I'm Australian, so...
Were you going to say something rude about me, Noel?
No.
Good.
Just a quick check before we move on from bar risers, because I know this will trigger my dad if he listens to it. How tall are your bar risers?
The ones I had on my KTM were pretty tall. These ones, I think, are just 20 mil.
I've got fat bars on, so there's like a converter rocker thing that inadvertently almost raises them just in a regular yoke to take these fat bars. But I probably am just sort of standing up, looking for a comfortable position if I'm standing up for long periods of time on a big European trail ride, yeah.
I think there's nothing wrong with that because, even if you go and look at actual rally bikes, the gap between the handlebars and the foot pegs is much more than it is on a dirt bike. It does affect the handling and the way they handle, but the gap is much more because if you have to ride 1,000 kilometers in a day, being completely bent at the hips all day is going to ruin your back. Like it just is. So there's a balance there for sure. And there's no hard rules either. You got to find what works for you a little bit.
I definitely need to look into it more because I am very haphazard about setting a bike up. I pretty much just do it so that
we could do a podcast about that. In life one. We could mic ourselves up and do it in real life.
That sounds like a video, though.
Yeah, we can do a video.
Let's do it. So I've got 5 different scenarios, if you would. Imagine yourself. I'd like to paint a picture. You've joined Noel and I in the Lake District. We're heading out onto the trails. There's some rocky, steep ascents, steep descents. There's water crossings. There's ruts. Everything, deep gravel, there's everything that a day's trail riding in the UK can throw at you. We've just come off the Windermere ferry. We're heading towards Grizedale, and the first trail we meet, I'm just making the shit up as I go along. I'm going to run out of steam eventually. First trail we go, you know the one, Noel, heading up to the Fox. Quite a steep, quite a rocky ascent. How should you approach that?
First off, what bike are we riding?
Pretty much everybody that listens to this podcast either rides a CRF or a GS, and they're not taking the GS up Grizedale to the Fox.
If we're talking kind of a CRF 300L, firstly, you need to make sure you start off these things in a good position to deal with the acceleration you need. If you're stood square in the middle of the bike and then you accelerate, you're going to fall backwards. You need a little bit of like lean into it. You mentioned it earlier. Some momentum is super helpful. But I think there's a sweet spot with momentum as well, where you have to be mindful of how much your brain can process. But in a hill like that, where it sounds like you can't really get away with stopping so easily, you don't want to be stopping on it. You have to find the sweet spot for your brain where you can attack that hill with some good momentum, but not so fast that your brain can't keep up and you shut off. Because the moment you shut off, it's hard to recover the speed you've lost again. So you want to be nice and smooth and moving at a pace your brain can process. Look medium far ahead in general. This is another point that's part of your fundamentals, is where you look. Generally, I try to scan the trail so that I know what's coming. I don't know if there's any rock steps, but in a lot of rocky hills, you kind of sometimes get some rock steps or a big slab rock. You need to know those are coming before you get there, but you don't just want to stare at them blindly and hope that you miss all of the other obstacles in between. So we're doing a bit of scanning there.
This is such a huge part of trail riding that people don't talk about much, and that's picking lines. It's so crucial, isn't it? I always ride up that particular track that Clive's talking about very, very slowly, probably slower. I always try not to be in front because I know I'm going to ride it slower than other people, because I'll always be in first gear, probably fairly high revs, but I'll always be picking the line. I'm obsessed with picking the right line and not getting into a silly situation.
It's like that thing, isn't it? Having a plan is all well and good until you get punched in the face. You can pick your line as much as you like, but your bike's going to take you somewhere else 9 times out of 10, though.
No, I disagree with that. But so much of it, I think, is about getting good at picking that line, isn't it?
It totally is. And I think you've touched on something really important that changes as you get better. And it kind of circles back to the thing I said about learning to be patient with the clutch. Once you learn to be patient with the clutch, you can also learn to be a bit more patient with the throttle, because you stop that situation where you engage wheel spin by accident or you stall by accident, because you have the skills to ride through that. And once you have those, the next phase is to learn to ride uphill as slowly as possible. It's actually one of the next Mini Tip Monday that I'm filming is a drill on this. My old man's school, we teach it on, I think, level 2 and level 3. It's the key to unlocking going up really difficult hills, because the moment you can slow down and pick your line and then generate drive where there wasn't any before, you suddenly open up a whole world that you didn't have, because you have time. And you have the time and the patience to be able to get up stuff. Before you have that, you have to just work with the momentum and the speed that your brain can process things at. But what's probably happened to you there as well, Noel, I think your brain has sped up and your ability to ride slower has got better. So the two, when they start to meet, is when you can be really deliberate and pick the line up a hill. And you see this at the most extreme end with extreme enduro, because the guys that are the best at this are unbelievable at riding incredibly slowly up incredibly difficult things and then generating the speed to get over the thing that can't be ridden up slowly. It's almost incomprehensible how good they are at this. And it's just that at the top end, really.
You stopped at the Fox, you've taken your photographs, which are obligatory once you reach the top of Grizedale. And the next thing is...
No, I think you should tell people what the Fox is.
The Fox is this huge wooden sculpture. I think is there a bit of a sculpture trail in Grizedale Forest?
Yes, there is, yeah.
So it's part of the sculpture trail, and it's this massive 8-foot long wooden sculpture of a fox. That's why it's called the Fox. So what goes up has to come down, then quite a steep, rocky, boulder-strewn descent down to the visitor centre.
Nice.
Which you do on the way back up, which turns into a steep uphill.
Baby head-sized boulders.
Yeah. Top tips for descending tricky things.
There's two good rules with downhills for me. The first is that if you're going down, you're going to get to the bottom. So we're good. The second is if in doubt, flat out. Obviously, those are both jokes. No, I would say, again, a little bit the fundamentals. So you start with your riding position, make sure that that's good. When you're going downhill, you don't want too much weight on your arms. So that means you need your hinge at the hips. You want your butt back a little bit, and you want your heels down. And doing those two things puts the weight a bit more on your hamstrings. Your hamstrings is a nice big muscle. You'll probably feel it unless you stretch them a lot, so you'll know when they're working. And that kind of takes the weight off the handlebars. It gives you a little bit of latitude to let the handlebars move a bit more over those baby head boulders. The second thing is how we use the brakes. So I think braking pressure on the levers, both of them, should be quite constant. You don't want it coming on and off in an aggressive motion. It's not a digital thing. It's analog, and we can apply smooth pressure. Braking is constant, and it's over time. If you want to stop, you just add a tiny bit more pressure, and you give it more time, and you will stop. The same goes for slowing down. Sometimes what happens on those kind of loose hills is that you have to come off the brakes a little bit. So we have to start to look at the ground, choose our line carefully to choose the bits where it's obvious that you can slow down more. Maybe you have a good bit of ground that's nice and smooth. You can do a bit more slowing down there so that when you come onto the loose ground, you can gain a little bit of speed and it's not the end of the world. Those are probably my three things: your vision, how you brake, and your body position.
Are you thinking about weighting the front wheel in that scenario to sort of get some more grip on the front tyre?
Not really. You're already heading downhill anyway. There's enough grip there. If you were really, really pushing to get some grip into the front wheel, you might put some pressure through the handlebars. But generally, if you're just trying to get down a hill like that, I would say probably not. You probably just want to try and keep them as loose as possible. It's a bit situation dependent, but for the most part, as a basic rule, not so much.
I know he listens. That question was for our friend Andy Hill, who I've seen get off and walk down really steep hills.
The last bit with downhills is not to ignore the gearbox. The gearbox is a really good safety net. It depends on the hill and your comfort and your brain speed and everything, but the gears are a really good way to slow down. If you run into that situation where you're like, oh shit, I can't stop here. All right, it gets a bit scary, but most bikes have a maximum speed in first gear. We teach this on the school as well, but like on a GS, the maximum speed on a 1250 GS in first gear is like 12 miles an hour. Obviously, sometimes 12 miles an hour feels horrendously fast, but it is only 12 miles an hour. So like on a CRF 300L, it's going to be even slower. You can use that engine braking to your advantage. If you make a mistake with the front wheel or you need to come off the brakes, you can use that engine braking to keep things in check a little bit.
And you're standing up, right? Heading downhill?
Yeah, generally I would that's the one place where I would stand up more than I would anywhere else. Like on a 300L going uphill, you mentioned it before that sometimes you feel like you're holding on going uphill, but on a little bike, enduro bike, trail bike, not an adventure bike, the position, sometimes it is more advantageous to sit down, because you can accelerate easier when you're sat down than if you're in a good position sat down, then you can stood up. But going downhill, it's kind of the opposite. You really need your balance dialed in. You need to be quite separate from the bike to let it move and to be far back. So unless the hill is super steep and beyond your ability, I would try to be stood up.
And of course, when you're going down those big rock steps as well, you need to get your arse right over the back wheel to stop yourself from, well, ideally
Absolutely.
You'd kind of wheelie over it, wouldn't you, and stay level. But if you have to roll over a massive rock step, get your arse over the back wheel.
Yeah, and normally further than you think, I think is a golden rule, is that you think you're far back, but you're probably not. Heels down and get your ass back some more. Where are we going next?
You've got to the bottom of the Fox at the other end. You're at the Grisdale Visitor Centre. You're turning left and you're kind of heading off to some farm tracks now. Some lovely lanes, but there's a couple of them that are fairly heavily rutted. Fucking ruts. Everybody hates ruts. How do you ride fucking ruts?
So I have got a great video on this, actually. Not to plug my own stuff here. Ruts are relatively simple at a basic level, and then you just need time. But the first thing, your body position is really, really critical in ruts. You need your toes tucked in. That is a non-negotiable unless you want your toe to meet your heel at some point or them to replace each other. I've seen it happen. It's not pretty. Please tuck your toes in. You want your weight sunk a little bit through your heels of your boots so that it sets your body position well. There's much more detailed explanations of this in videos, or if you go and do a course with someone, they'll probably explain this more than we've got time for here. But get your body position right. Loose on the handlebars. The most important thing in ruts after your body position is how we use the throttle. So when we accelerate on a bike, the rear end squats And when you decelerate, the weight transfers to the front wheel. So every time you chop the throttle on and then off, you change how the bike handles, and it will make it want to climb out of ruts and turn. And it's a really bad thing. So the goal is to try to be as smooth and as constant as you can through a rut, not accelerating, not decelerating, just finding a pace where your brain can keep up with what's going on and just brrr all the time. That single note exhaust, constant, that is a game changer for your rut riding. The better you get, the faster you can do that, but it's always still the same technique. Nice, constant, smooth drive through the rut. And then we talked about it before a little bit. Where you look is also quite important. If you can pick your vision up even just like a meter or two, it makes a massive difference to your personal balance, and it will change your experience with ruts. That thing I talked about before of how quickly you can process what's going on is also really important with ruts. So when you're starting to learn, there's so much input through the bike and so much you're trying to keep in charge of. If you go too fast, your brain just cannot keep up. So you have to go slower. And as you get better, that will obviously grow. And the last thing I would say is you have to cover the clutch in ruts, because it's your get out of jail card. The moment you make a mistake, if you pull the clutch in, you can save the situation. But if you don't pull the clutch in and you're on a bike that's driving forwards and you're off balance, all that's going to happen is you're going to drive your face slowly into the ground, and your mates are going to laugh at you and you're going to get covered in mud.
Do you think dragging the back brake helps at all? Does that stabilize it in that situation, or not really?
Yeah, you can. I say it's a little bit more of an advanced thing. It depends on where you're at with your level, but for sure I do that.
The moment it always goes to shit is when the front wheel seems to catch and you can't correct.
Yes.
Can't correct that. I've had the most success riding in ruts when I put my weight way back. On my XR, if my calves are touching the luggage rack, and I'm really leaning back, that's when I can correct slight mistakes with the front wheel. If it catches, there doesn't seem to be too much weight on it.
But I think you don't want to be too off balance, if that makes sense. There's a sweet spot. The one other thing I would say, and this is quite an advanced thing, it takes a little bit of time to get your head around. When you have that situation where the front catches, especially this is easier in the UK because a lot of time our ruts are wet, if you can turn into the rut, so say you're riding along and the left side starts to grab, if you can turn the handlebars into that, it pushes the bike back into the middle. That is not something that's going to happen the first time you think about this.
That sounds really counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It totally is. And it definitely took me like a few years to get my head around it, but it definitely works. Now there's a limit. Riding a GS down a wet rut on 50/50 adventure tires, that's not going to work. Like, it's nearly impossible. But riding a CR300L or an XR with a dirt bike tire on the front, 100% it works. It takes a bit of time and practice, but now that I've said it to you, you've got a whole winter to practice riding down wet ruts in the Lake District.
On the Tet in northern France, there's loads of tracks where the tractor's been through it so many times, that there's sort of they're kind of 10 inches deep, and then they get covered in grass. They're the worst ones, aren't they? The ones where you don't even know if you're in a rut or not. You're just riding in deep grass. That might be a rut, it might not be a rut. You just don't know.
Yeah, that is horrific.
I suppose that's a tricky one to give advice on, isn't it, really? Because you're pretty much riding in the dark, aren't you?
As long as you pray at the start of those tracks, I think you're all right.
Or just ride behind someone and see and gauge it. Put a feeler gauge rider out in front.
We've done 3 lanes so far. Is there any more?
There's loads. We've got 120 miles to do. It's been really wet, actually. It's the Lake District. It's the wettest part in England. You've got through the rutty section. You've done all right. You've used some skills. You've got these new skills in place now. You're kind of nearing the end of the ride. You've reached the Tarn Hors section. Part of Tarn Hors is there's a really...
I think you'll find it's Tarn House. What's this Tarn Hors? Where's that?
Nobody says Tarn Hors that I've heard.
Tarn Hors? I've never heard anyone call it Tarn Hors.
It's not as if you've lived here your whole life. Anyway, Tarn House. It's beautiful. It is a beautiful part of the Lake District.
Yeah, it
fantastic
really
view of Langdale Pikes and things. But part of the track there is they've chucked loads and loads of gravel on it to fill in some of the bomb holes. So you're riding through foot-deep gravel. And I'm kind of thinking gravel, mud, sand, or sort of similar sort of...
Very similar. And I would say if you can ride a wet rut well, the principles of riding sand, the feeling is different, but the technique is very similar. Weight a little bit further back, but a lot of the attitude of the bike is determined by the throttle. So body position good, heels down, but a little bit further back. Constant drive, not accelerating, not decelerating if you can avoid it. Just that nice constant drive sets the attitude of the bike a little bit towards the rear wheel, takes some weight off the front wheel, good vision. light on the handlebars, so you're not worrying too much about where the front wheel goes. The difference with like your deep gravel or your sand is you don't want that front wheel to dig in too much. So then you use the back brake a little bit more for the slowing down, because when you slow down with the back brake, you pull the rear of the bike down rather than pulling the front down with the front brake. So it's kind of the one difference when you go to like a deep gravel or a sand over like a hard pack ground. You don't want to load the front wheel because it'll just tuck. It's not that you can't use the front brake. It's just that the back brake becomes important for holding the attitude of the bike. So even if you're going to use the front brake, if you use the back brake slightly before it, you pull the back of the bike down first and you don't get that weight transfer. And then you look like prime Dakar, prime Jeffrey Hurlings, just absolutely ripping through Tarn Horse.
Now you're having a big day out there. Thank you for that. Last one. You're having a big day out because you've decided you've done your loop in the Lake District. You've decided you're going to cross back over Windermere and you're going to go and do Breast High. It has been raining, as we all know. To get to Breast High, there's a fairly big river crossing you have to do, and it's quite bouldery. It's quite slippy. It's quite deep. What's the best way to approach a water crossing?
I generally find the faster you hit that, the better it's going to go for you. But just make sure your mate is there with a camera and a bottle of oil.
I think he's joking again, folks.
Yeah, I am. And I would say that that's the most common mistake I see with anyone who's new to off-road riding, is that there's a connection between water where humans seem to think at the moment that they can't see, they should go faster. But I think with rivers, I don't know if either of you ever drowned a bike.
No,
of course not.
No,
not idiots.
Ouch. My suggestion would be if you can make it through your entire riding career without you or one of your mates drowning a bike in the middle of nowhere, I would do that, because it is shit. Like, there is no better word for it. It is a crap experience. Firstly, you need to make sure that the river is actually rideable. So if you know it or someone with you knows it, great. If you don't know it, walk it 100%. Even if you're going to get wet feet, if you pick a fast flowing river that's knee deep, that can be a really bad situation. Like, it doesn't need to be particularly deep for it to be really dangerous, to really mess your day up. I drowned a bike in a river that was just over knee deep once, and it was a really shit day in my life. It was a really long ride home and it was cold and wet.
Do you absolutely stick to that? Do you do that every time?
If I look at a river and I'm like, I can see the bottom of it and I'm pretty confident I can ride across it, then no. But if I get to a river and I don't know it and it looks quick or it looks deep, I will 100% check. It just is not worth the risk, especially, it's not so bad in the UK, but if you are adventure riding somewhere in one of the remoter parts of the country or somewhere else in the world, it can be hours and hours to get help. It's not a situation you want to find yourself in. It seems funny, but then also when the big ends go on your bike 6 months later, that's also not particularly funny. So it's a bit of a killjoy, because rivers are wicked, but you've got to be a bit careful with them. Once you know that you can ride across it, the first rule is deciding whether you're going to do it stood up or sat down. I think this comes down a little bit to your own skill level and knowing whether you can get your feet down if you make a mistake. Say you ride over a boulder and it moves under the front wheel. That's a very difficult situation for anyone to ride out without having a dab. So you need to know in yourself that you're confident you're going to get that foot down. And even if it's a bit loose underfoot, you're going to be able to stop and kind of solve the problem. If you're 5'2", that is definitely going to be harder for you than if you're 6'2". So you've got to take that into consideration a little bit.
So you're saying there's no hard and fast rule on this. You're saying
no. I think
depends who you are, what bike you're on, what the river crossing's like,
yeah,
what the rocks might be.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, because I think you have to take into account those real world situations.
When would you sit down?
When the river is on the limit of my ability. So if I'm unsure of what's in the bottom, if I can see it's super loose and rocky, then I will paddle through. And again, that's a whole nother little can of worms, but learning to paddle a bike super well is another skill that is so worth learning, especially if you're not as tall. You have to learn that a little bit quicker because you can't get away with it. And then I'd say the last rule is really learning to just ride at a pace where you can deal with the consequences of what's going on. If you're going through in second gear with some throttle, it's probably too quick if the bottom of it is loose and rocky, because you just won't have the ability to, I wouldn't have the ability to deal with the consequences of riding over a big boulder I didn't see. If I can see it coming, it's a different story. But if you can't see it coming, it's a really difficult skill to have. So if you're carrying too much speed, it's a recipe for you to be swimming. Ride slowly, choose carefully whether you stand up or you paddle, and don't be afraid if it is a big river. to have someone help you walk it across, to walk with you. We did a video in Iceland a few years ago with my girlfriend, and there was a group of 10 of us that did like an organized trip with a friend of mine. In that video, like there's not a single river crossing where we didn't all have people in the rivers to get those bikes across. And you always had one person riding. Those rivers they're not very deep, but they're super, super fast. And quite regularly, there's a 50-foot waterfall just around the corner. The consequence of it is really high. So you just don't take that risk. And it looks kind of goofy because there's 5 of you stood in a river helping each other across. But I guarantee there's some of those rivers I never would have got across without those 5 people. I got no problem being like, we need to help each other across here and solve that problem. Like you go and watch a video of Chris Birch riding through a river. If it's real sketchy, he'll be sat down as well and walking. He did one, I think it's called Sea to Summit. And there's a clip in that of him and his mate helping each other across the river. This is Chris Birch. Like the man knows how to ride a motorbike. When the river gets janky, he's not afraid to ask for a bit of help to get himself across it.
Yeah, and he won the award, didn't he, at the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Awards last year for the best instructional video series.
Nice, yeah. Well,
We'll fix it next year, don't we? Let you win something.
Oh, my ego just hurts so much.
I just wanted to finish with one of your tips I use almost every time I'm out on my motorbike, and that's the one is how to push your bike. And it's so simple and so fucking obvious, and yet I've never done it before until I watched one of your videos. And that's basically, if you need to push your bike, leave it in tick over and just use the clutch to ride it along. It's so much easier.
I think in that video, I actually do a forward crossing in that video as well. It's a good example. Like, we were talking about big people and small people, but if you're a little person and you have a hard time paddling and you're on a big bike, there's nothing wrong with getting off that bike and walking it across that river.
And using that technique of letting it drive itself.
Absolutely, yeah. And if you need someone else to just be there to check that they're going to catch you on the other side, if you lose your balance or whatever, then do it. But the more you practice it, the better you get at it. And like I think you mentioned Mav earlier, but he uses that all the time because he's not such a tall guy and he rides like one of the tallest adventure bikes ever made. So like he has to use that a lot, and I think he's got quite good at it because of that.
Well, he's had a lot of practice because he's not worked with Ken Dodd for fucking years. So did you get it? Diddy Man reference?
God, come on. Judge your audience, for goodness sake.
There'll be a few people that get it. There's that new Llel waterproof suit. When's that coming out?
3 different adventure suits actually. There's a multi-tour, which is just like a generalized sort of adventure suit with it's like a 3-layer system with a zip-in waterproof and liner, but it's pretty good in kind of most conditions. I'd say it's pretty good when it's hot, surprisingly. And then they've got a fully vented one, and then they've got a 3-layer laminate waterproof one called Dry Tour. And those are, I think they're on the shelves at the end of December, start of January. If they have a new line of clothing, they bring out the high-end stuff first and they work their way down. So the first range that's coming out is it's called 7.5 multi-tour, dry tour and flow tour. And that's a little bit more high-end product. And then in the future, there'll be like a more mid-range coming. And then I think a more budget version. I've been kind of wearing them on and off all since the summer really. And they've been really good.
Fantastic stuff, as always, from Llel. A massive thanks to him. Don't forget, go and have a look at Break Magazine on YouTube and on his website. There's some amazing riding skills and other content on there. And don't forget, the Bike Shed, 29th of December at 4 o'clock. We'll see you there. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate your support. Don't forget you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you really appreciate what we do, you could consider supporting us on Patreon or buy us a coffee. Links are available on our website, which is tampodcast.com, tampodcast.com, where we also have a limited selection of branded stuff. But either way, please keep listening and spreading the word. See you next time.